I love technology, but we are becoming dependent upon it as our kids are dependent upon it. And so we assume that we can ask the AI and the AI will give us a correct answer. We sort of turn off our brains because we're holding a supercomputer in the palm of our hands.
In a world looking for meaning and purpose and belonging, if you don't know what's true, that can feel so decentering. So how do we create a safe space in our homes? Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Raising the Next Gen podcast. I'm Pastor Angie Larson, and this is such a fun day for me. I have so many questions. My curiosity is piqued as we get to talk to my friend, Dan Scott. Now, Dan and I met about 6 years ago, right?
We did. Yeah. Like 29 is pre-pandemic.
Yes, it was we have known each other through a pandemic. And Dan and I kind of hit it off right away. He's somebody that I admire, that I have learned from. We swap stories of what it means to have 4 children and live in this world today. We're both great, solid Gen Xers. You're an Enneagram 7, I think, and I'm a 3. So you bring the fun to my life, and I'm grateful for that. Dan, welcome to the Raising the Next Gen podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, it's so good to be here, Angie. This is so fun. I was so glad to get your text. I'm really glad to be here. Yeah, you know what? My heart center is a 3. So I absolutely. So 7 is my Enneagram, but in the triad, I have a 3. Yeah. So I completely know where y'all are coming from.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thanks for getting me.
I'm going to succeed no matter what. Yeah.
I need people who bring a little fun in my life too. So, hey, Dan comes from, you're from Atlanta. Will you tell us a little bit about your work, your life, your family, all of those things?
For sure. Yes, I live outside of Atlanta currently. I have not always lived here. I grew up in New Jersey, outside of New York City, which was so fun. I met my wife in college. We've been married for a little over over 26 years. Almost. Anyway, I don't know. It's around there. Okay. And we have 4 kids. They range in age from 22 to 18, which, yes, they are very close together, but there's of you listening and watching. But we have a lot of fun with them, just helping them kind of navigate life. There's a lot of books on raising children. Yes. A ton of books on raising adults.
Right.
Which
I agree.
is absolutely kind of what we're in that season right now where you're wanting them to live their lives, but you're also but I could give you advice if you want the advice, and you just kind of have to navigate that. But it's great. We met because I worked at an organization called Orange that kind of works with the future and faith of the next generation. I no longer work there. I'm kind of branching out, doing some other things. But I get to work with a lot of content. I get to be curious about the world and about the what people are doing in it. And I get to, just have fun and I'm a 7. I just said follow where my heart kind of is going.
Oh, I super love that.
It's been a great season.
Yeah, I can understand in solidarity about those raising adults. There isn't a lot out there, and maybe we need to just do full episodes on what it means to be parents of adults. Because I don't know, you kind of think that you're going to send them off to college and it's going to get easier. I don't think that I have found that to be true at all.
No.
So there's just a different posture, right? And how do we do that?
Which I think leans into what I think what we're going to talk about today, right? Anyway.
No, it's great. Dan, I asked you to come on here, not only just because I respect and care about you as a friend, but also I got to hear you speak at a conference about a year ago now. And you gave a presentation that has just stuck with me. And and in this presentation, you talked about really the decline of all things of curiosity in our American teens and children. And I had never thought about it in that way. And I think that's why it stuck with me is like, how do we raise critical thinkers that are curious? And, we're living in a climate now where with AI, with, all the things, I think our kids are just losing their gift of critical thinking in some ways. Yeah. And I know that you've done a lot of research and gained a lot of wisdom. Could you teach us about why this is happening? I think we feel it, but what's the why behind it?
I think part of it is we live in this information saturated environment, which we all know. We know that. On top of that, it's coming at us so quickly that we're hardly able to stop and question any of it.
Sure.
And so there are a few things that are happening. And this has been happening for a while, but we're teaching to tests. We're not teaching to learn how to learn. We're teaching information to take a test, to pass it, to get more money for my school district. Yeah. Right. Like that. And I love my kids are raised in the public school, right?
Yeah, me too.
I absolutely, I love the public school and how it has helped our kids. At the same time, a lot of it is you can tell it's teaching information and it's not teaching understanding or those higher levels of thinking where you're trying to evaluate and synthesize and analyze all of those things. Schools just don't have time for it because they're really trying to just get to, you have to take the AP test and you have to pass the AP test. And so here's all the information you need to do that. As opposed to, hey, let's think about the philosophy of art and where it came from, or let's think about why this thing happened in history and how we can prevent it from happening again. It's not that, and again, gross stereotypes, but that is something that you're seeing. So you're just not being taught critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
I saw. Sorry, don't interrupt. My son, this week he was working on something, and I hadn't know. He's like, "Oh, my teacher's just going to AI grade this anyway," and I was like, "What? Teachers can AI grade?" I just was like, my mind was blown. I
could do a whole podcast on that.
I am not. I am. I didn't even know that was a thing. I thought, oh wow,
yeah, that's crazy. I think the other thing is public discourse has changed. We do live in this weird truth decay. There was just this idea that people can just throw out content and information. No one's fact checking it. It gets shared before it gets fact checked.
Yeah.
And so you see something, you assume it's on the internet, so it's true. And there's just, that's the phrase. The truth decay is the phrase. And some of this is misinformation. There's essence of it that are true, but it's not 100% true. And then there's some of it that's literally disinformation. It's presented in order to trick or deceive or, present a certain way of thinking that people want you to think about. And because you're not even sure what's true and what's not true anymore, you just kind of take it as what it is.
Right.
And then the last thing that I think is sort of, and this isn't even for adults, this is actually probably more for adults than kids, but we're the algorithm, we're the product of the technology that we use.
Yeah.
And they put it, when we click on something, when we like something, when we hover on something longer than 3 seconds, that is a data point that's connected to our accounts, that's connected to accounts out there. And so you're fed information based on what you've engaged with before. And unfortunately, people often engage with high emotional content that, Jonathan Haidt talks about this, this is everywhere. This is not new to me. But the goal is to keep you on on the platform as long as possible, because that's advertising dollars for Facebook, Instagram, Meta, TikTok, all of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're kind of then forced into a way of thinking, and you're not even presented with the other side of it. You're just engaged. You're just constantly in your own echo chamber and so it's very difficult. You have to, if you're not being taught critical thinking skills, you don't even know the questions to ask. You're no longer curious, because you don't have to be, because the algorithm is telling you what you should find important and interesting and watchable and bingeable, and you can't even tell what's true and what's not true anymore.
Yeah.
You're just sort of stuck. And so until you are and kids aren't, until you jar yourself out of it, and you're proactively wrecking your algorithm, it's going to be really tricky. And kids, obviously, students just don't even have the skills to be able to do that. And that's why it's a parent conversation, right?
I think so.
It's a parent conversation, it's a church conversation, and not necessarily a conversation you're having with a kid.
And I think too, like critical thinking, what it does is and curiosity even, it requires you to like take perspective of another. And if all we're being fed is our own perspective, then it is so difficult for us to just be able to, perspective sharing, to have empathy, to sit there and say like, hey, let me understand where you're at. Most folks that I've talked to, and it doesn't matter even what side of the, I don't want to get political, but of the political aisle, they both can't understand at all how the other one has gotten to there. And so if we aren't able to think critically or perspective share, and if our next generation really, we haven't given them that tool, what happens to our social discourse, but also what happens in our families, like what happens in our own homes,
No, I know.
I remember one time years ago, my mom was looking at something and she was so convinced it was true. It was like what you're saying about this truth decay. She was so convinced it was true. It's like, Mom, I actually don't think that that's true. And she's like, no, I read it. Like here, I was like, okay, show me where you read it. And I went and I poked it out for her. And then I was like, okay, let me show you all these other places in which, and she's like, oh, but I couldn't believe it. But then my kids are growing up where they're like, I don't even know what's true.
Mm-hmm.
And so how can you have in a world looking for meaning and purpose and belonging, if you don't know what's true, that can feel so decentering.
100%. 100%. Yeah. And this is my, my daughters, both of their daughters, the 2024 election was their first time voting in an election. And they were so convinced that they would win, that their person would win because of their algorithm, because of their echo chamber.
Yeah.
And when their side didn't win, I hate that it's their side and our side and whatever, but they were like, oh my goodness, like the world is going to come to an end. We can't, like, it was decentering. It was completely, it was just, I don't know what to do about this. I don't, how is this even going to happen? And it was like, well, let's ask some questions about it. Let's think through it. Is the world really going to end?
The world's not going to end.
The world's not going to end. You're going to be okay. I'm going to continue to be your father and your dad, and I'm going to continue to fight for what you believe in and care about. And it just means we work harder. It just means we work stronger. It just, and I don't, again, like you said, I don't want to make this political, but I think where we've come to politically as a nation is because of all of this, right? The fact that I have friends that didn't know who Charlie Kirk was because they're so entrenched in their progressive liberal side of things.
Sure.
Right? They were like, well, who is this person? Like, and so it's that, right? And so as parents, I think we have to be proactive in being the devil's advocate sometimes.
Yeah.
And at least poking the bear and introducing the fact that there's another option to think about.
There's another option, and there's good people in that other option. Like,
yes,
great, faithful, beautiful people
100%.
in the other perspective, and people that are the image of God.
Yes.
And if we want to take it another step further, but I think, just to be curious, to sit there and say, okay, well, how do you think they did get to that, viewpoint? How do you think? And I think about it a lot as a pastor, beautiful people that disagree. So, but they don't. They're actually not as far apart as they think that they are.
No, and that ultimately is, I think, where curiosity and critical thinking lead you to that conclusion. But until you get to the place where you're even able to admit, hey, I may be wrong on this thing. I should be humble enough to ask a question, because it's true. I think the sides want us to think we're farther apart than we actually are, because it's true. When you sit down with someone across, you really do care about the same things. You really do want the same outcome. You may want to get there in a different way, but you're like, no, I want my family to be provided for. I want my community to be safe. I want everyone wants those things. I
want to have freedom,
right? Identity, purpose, and belonging. We all want those things. And how we get there is where we may disagree. But if we could stack hands on the place of unity, we're going to be a lot better. And I do think it takes the curiosity to even, to reimagine the other side as being good, as having the image of God, as having
not
value.
Just not wrong, but
not
good.
Wrong.
Because I think right now it's just everybody gets grouped into that's wrong, instead of, wait a second, they're actually really good. So let me perspective take and have some empathy for that. So what can parents really do to sort of inspire more critical thinking in their homes? Like, if we're not finding it in public discourse, or if we're not finding it in a memorization for the AP test kind of way, someone's got to teach this sort of out in a little bit. And don't get me wrong, I think teachers do an incredible job. I just think that they're stacked up against them. So
100%. My kids have had amazing teachers who have pushed at that, right? But they are, I completely agree. Okay, so what can parents do? I think one thing is, we're scared. There's a little fear of critical thinking and curiosity.
Okay, same.
When our kids, I grew up in a church environment that never wanted me to ask a hard question, right? Because of the slippery slope of, okay, you ask that question, you're going to pull a thread that unravels everything. So I think that there is some sort of fear. I think so we end up speaking in statements and not, living with questions, because we're like, no, if you can believe this, if you can say this, if you can hold on to this statement, then you're okay. You're safe, as opposed to the questions. So I think what I would love I think it's a mind shift. I think it's a change in perspective in even how you communicate with your kids when you disagree with them, or when you see them doing something that you're not crazy about. I think it's, instead of fearing where the question may lead, it's confidence that you're in this together, right? So it's moving from this fear to confidence that no, curiosity isn't dangerous. Critical thinking isn't critical. It's a way of us processing the world around us, which is ultimately going to make us better citizens. It's going to make us better humans. It's going to make us better followers of Jesus. If we can wrestle with it, we own it.
Yeah.
And so the questions really do end up leading to ownership. Another perspective shift that I think is important is if I see my kid act out, I assume, oh, they're just being bad, or I assume that, you know, they don't like me, or they don't,
Yeah.
like that they're doing it to like, just do this. And what rather we shift to an invitation of saying, hey, okay, this is going to be a learning moment for me. Like behavior, we have to be curious about, because behavior is always a symptom of a greater something that's happening,
Yeah.
right? I'm scared, so I act out a certain way. I'm sad, so I act out a certain way. Okay, well, what are you? So, but we tend to, because the behavior is urgent, we hit the behavior, and we don't invite the deeper conversation to get to the root of why that behavior existed in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's a really, that's important. And then, man, I love technology.
Mm-hmm.
I love it, but we really are dependent upon it. We are becoming dependent upon it as our kids are dependent upon it. And so we assume that we can, that we can ask, and we can ask the AI, and the AI will give us a correct answer, which just isn't it. And we sort of turn off our brains because we're holding a supercomputer in the palm of our hands.
Yeah.
And I think we as parents can really model more like media literacy, of saying, of even like, I mean, you and I, like, you have to search things every so often and be like, that's crazy. If you did that with your kids, and you are having a conversation with your kids, and they're like, well, I can just look it up. Okay, well, let's look it up. Like, let's do it. Let's do the exercise together. And you show them, hey, so these first 5 things, just so you know, they paid to be there.
Yeah.
So they might not be the best answer. They might not be the most correct. They just have the most money. So like, I don't think kids know that automatically. They're not taught that automatically. And so if we can teach them some media literacy about how to even discern and question, what's happening, I think that can be helpful too. But we have to model it. We have to verbally say, hey, I'm going to search this. This is how I'm searching it. And it sounds crazy to yourself, but it really is helping kids understand, oh, this is how I ask a good question. This is how I follow up with, thought behind my actions, that sort of thing.
My husband Ryan and I, we both followed lots of different newses, from the whole entire thing, because we want so badly to sort of understand actually what's going on in the history or in the ethos or the culture. And we are so mean to our kids. Sometimes with the devil's advocate thing, they'll be so strong in something, and the two of us will push them a little bit. And actually, it's mostly because we think it's fun and because we want them to be critical thinkers. But we'll sit there and they'll say, this is it. And then we'll be like, well, hey, here's the other perspective. And it drives them crazy. But the idea is that I do want them, I want them to think, and I don't necessarily need them to agree with me either.
No, 100%. No,
100%. I don't need my children to agree with me. I want them to, and I think about even like Angie's journey, where I sit now as someone approaching their 50s. I have very different thoughts than I did when I entered ministry 25 years ago. Absolutely. And so I want space for growth for them. And I think right now it seems like the world doesn't want us to grow so much. So how do we as parents create spaces to kind of do that?
I have found that my kids have taught me so much about culture, in ways that I don't think I necessarily would have done on my own.
Yeah.
I think we as parents even have to be curious about what the voices that our kids are listening to, right? if we don't even know what's feeding the way they think about the world,
right?
There's no way we can have an intelligent conversation about it. You know, when we were growing up, I think we're the same age.
Yeah.
When we were growing up, it was really hard to hide what you were listening to. It was really hard to hide what you were watching, because there was no personal, you know, I had a Walkman, I had a Discman, I got my Def Leppard tape.
You were definitely a lot cooler than I was, Dan. So
right. But still, there was always that chance that, you know, my radio's on and my parents are like, why are you listening to that? Do you know what that's saying? Do you know what that, you know, where now it's all in the ears.
Like, it's all in your own head.
It's all in your own head. And so one of the things that we always do is, like, we've been doing it for years, but like, if we're in the car driving, we're like, you're the music, right? Like we hand them the jack and we're like, it's you, let's listen, like play a playlist. I don't care what it is. No judgment. I just want to know what you're listening to. I want to know the voices that, you know, and it's to be curious. It's not in a judgmental way. It's like, hey, what podcasts do you listen to? Yeah. What YouTube channels have you been watching? And my son, has turned us on to some amazing podcasts, like, that are just like super interesting, like things that you would never. He's a fashion designer, and so he listens to this podcast called Fashion Neuroses, and he was like, you should listen to it. Like, even if you're not into clothes so much, the philosophical conversations that they're having about life focused in clothing is just really interesting. And so we're like, okay, yeah. And so you end up listening to it, you're like, oh, okay, so this is where he's getting this. This is why he's asking this question about the world. And then we can have intelligent conversations with them, you know, now. So I do think that there's some of that.
Yeah.
We think, as even parents, my kids were not teenagers that long ago, and you thought you knew everything that they were watching and listening to. But you don't.
Yeah.
You don't. And you just have to be, you know, because they can get around everything.
Yep. And that's why I think
you can get around every lot.
I know. And then that's why I think that the conversation is so key, you know, and that you have to sit there and just try and understand their perspective. But like you said, I think a little devil's advocate. We have to also not just echo what they say. We can't be an echo chamber to them. So I do think 100%. your point of sitting there saying, like, oh, we have to also say, like, what about this perspective, even if it's not ours, that we get to sit there and help them to think through these things so that we can become, more broad families and more broad communities. Because I do think we have so much more in common than the things that we don't. And so how do we remain curious in all of these? I think of this story from Alice in Wonderland. I'm going to be a little pastoral for a second.
I love it.
Great story in Alice in Wonderland where Alice gets to a crossroads where there's two directions to go. Have you heard this one?
Yeah.
Yeah. And she sits down and she's crying, and the Cheshire Cat shows up and says, "What's wrong?" And Alice says, "I don't know which way to go." And then the cat asks, "Well, that matter, where would you like to head to?" She says, "I don't care where." She says, "Well, it doesn't matter which path you take." So if we can help our kids see what this path, and then guide them and help them to have that discernment moment with them, I think that is probably one of the most loving things we can do to kind of continue to better our society. You know, Jesus asked 307 questions in Scripture.
I love it.
And
it's so funny. I did a deep dive because we wanted to add curiosity into the plan of how we were teaching kids about faith.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that theologically, people hate curiosity because they assume that curiosity is what was the catalyst for the fall. That curiosity is the catalyst for deconstruction. That they associate curiosity with everything negative. But you nailed it. Jesus is trying to get to the heart of every issue. And the only way you can do that is by asking questions and following up with questions and listening without an agenda, right? To actually listen and hear the answers that they're giving. And then instead of saying, but you're wrong, it's like, oh, well, here's another question, right? To get at the heart of it. It's so important.
Yeah. To just remain open again, to love people more than the issue. I think, how do I love you more than the issue? And that means that I have to be curious, stay open, and think critically, it's all those things. Dan, we're kind of wrapping up on our time here for today. I just for our listeners, what wisdom would you have to create a safe space? So how do we create a safe space in our homes for different views so that we can continue to have these conversations in our homes?
I honestly think we always talk about parenting with the end in mind, right? Like we do have a goal for our kids. At the same time, we have to realize we're not in control. That yes, I could want my kid to believe a certain way, practice faith a certain way, think about the politics the same way I think about politics. But at the end of the day, they're their own human being. And so knowing that the end in mind that I have will probably not be the end in mind that happens.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Right. I automatically can take a posture of humility and say, all right, I can learn as much about life from my kid as I hope my kid learns about life from me.
Okay, I love that.
And which means it's all your family's journey of growing up together.
Yeah.
I'm not who I was when my oldest was born in 2003.
Yeah.
And obviously he's not.
Yeah.
But I think we assume that like when we hit adulthood, we're adults, but we are also on a learning journey that we need our own version of curiosity. So I think the safe place is realizing, hey, we're on the same journey. We're just, as parents, we're just a little bit farther ahead.
Yeah.
And we're in it together. And so rather than saying I have to be right and you have to do what I say all the time, it could be, here's some wisdom. I really hope you follow it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you will, but when you don't, and life it might blow up, we're still here.
Yep.
We're still the place you can land. We're still the place you belong. You are always us. There are consequences, obviously, but like we're in it together because I'm going to still mess up. We're like, right. Like, it's just that humility that like, I just think it's kind of how we've tried. I'm not saying we've done it right, but that's sort of been our perspective with our kids the whole time. It's like, look, I just want you to be happy, healthy, whole. However that looks.
Yep.
For each of my kids is going to be different.
Yeah.
And if I can say, okay, are you happy? Are you healthy? Are you whole? Yeah. But I have to take that posture of humility that I don't have it all together. And so I have to ask questions.
And so we have to be curious.
I'm not always going to be right.
Don't you think though, as a Christian parent, one of the best things that we get to do for our kids is to understand that God has given them their personality, their agency, their humanness. And so we don't have to impose any of that on them. Instead, we just get to sort of like learn from and curate and love it. That's actually the posture that God does with us. And so we get to do that with our kids. And I think that is kind of, it's a humble gift to say, all right, little human, what has God got in store for you? What purpose does God have in store for you? I would have never imagined in 1997 when my son Chase came into the world that he'd be a computer network engineer. Like I didn't even That was probably not even a job in 1997. Maybe it was, but like
100%.
But I sit there and think it's been fun and an honor to watch him grow into the man that he has become, with the interests that he has that are so different than mine. But that's because he's an autonomous human being, So,
no, exactly.
Well, Dan, this has been so fun just to see you and connect with you, but also to have you here on our podcast. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for asking. This has been fantastic.
I love a good Minnesota-Georgia connection. That's a great thing. So, hey, listeners, thanks so much for tuning in to the Raising the Next Gen podcast. If you have a question for Dan or for me about anything that we kind of talked about, because we're all about curiosity here, just go ahead and drop it in the comments. But we want to encourage you to like and subscribe. Thanks for joining us.